Lyra had always felt a quiet wonder about the vast galaxy she called home. She was the only daughter of Lord Therion, the powerful ruler of a great alien kingdom. In the grand palace, filled with strange creatures and softly glowing lights, every day was ruled by strict laws and cold commands. Yet, Lyra's heart beat with hope and a yearning for kindness, a hope that set her apart from those who accepted cruelty as the way of life. Every day, Lyra observed her father's decisions with growing concern. Lord Therion was known for his firm rules and unyielding nature. He cared little for the pain his harsh judgments caused to the many beings under his rule. In secret, Lyra would whisper gentle words about the value of compassion and understanding. To her, every creature deserved a chance to live in peace, yet her father saw such softness as a sign of disobedience. One cool morning, as the twin suns began to rise and bathe the palace in a soft orange glow, Lord Therion summoned Lyra to the great hall. The hall was vast, its high ceilings echoing the voices of the gathered court. The guards stood in rigid lines, and the loyal subjects watched with silent apprehension. Seated upon his elevated throne, Lord Therion's eyes were as cold as the empty void of space. Without a hint of mercy, he declared that his daughter must leave the kingdom forever. His words rang out sharply, and in that moment, the world around Lyra seemed to shatter. In the heavy silence that followed, Lyra felt a deep, aching sorrow. The palace, once a place of wonder, now felt like a prison where her dreams were forbidden. With only a small bag containing a few cherished belongings, she stepped away from the only home she had ever known. The heavy palace doors closed behind her with a resounding thud, a sound that marked the beginning of a long and lonely journey. Outside, the world was strange and vast. The landscape stretched before her with endless deserts of shimmering dust and quiet, deep valleys that echoed the loneliness in her heart. Every step away from the palace felt like a step into the unknown, yet Lyra carried with her a spark of hope. In that hope, she believed that there was a place where kindness could bloom, a place where she might one day make a difference. Along the winding path of exile, Lyra met many travelers who had also suffered under the strict rule of her father. They were ordinary beings, not born of noble blood, yet they held on to the simple dream of a better life. These kind souls shared what little food and water they had, and in quiet conversations under starlight, they exchanged stories of hope and renewal. Their words nurtured Lyra's heart, helping her to see that even though she had been cast aside, she was not truly alone in her struggle. That first night, under the gentle light of distant stars, Lyra found refuge in a small cave. In the soft, cool darkness, she remembered the kind words her mother had once spoken about the power of love and inner strength. With a heavy heart but determined spirit, she made a silent promise to herself. One day, she vowed, she would return to her kingdom and bring light and hope back to those who suffered in silence. The days slowly turned into weeks as Lyra continued her journey through lands that were both beautiful and harsh. She learned to find food in the wild and water in unexpected places. Each night, she would sit beneath the open sky and write her thoughts in a small notebook. Her simple words, though plain, were filled with dreams of a future where every being could live without fear. She wrote about the kindness of strangers, the beauty of the stars, and the hope that someday the harsh rules of her past would be replaced by gentle understanding. One bright morning, as Lyra walked across a wide and open plain, she paused to look up at the endless sky. The vast universe seemed to whisper to her that there were many paths yet to be taken, many hearts waiting to be healed. Though she had lost her place in the kingdom of her birth, she had discovered something far more precious, her own inner light. This light was soft and warm, a small beacon in the darkness that promised new beginnings. With each step she took, the pain of exile slowly transformed into a quiet determination. Even in solitude, Lyra discovered that every challenge carried with it the seed of growth, and every lonely road led to unexpected friendships. Her journey was just beginning. and she carried with her the hope that one day she could build a world where care and kindness were cherished above all else. As the twin suns rose again on another day, Lyra walked forward with quiet strength. She was no longer simply the abandoned princess. She was a traveler with a mission, a beacon of hope in a vast and sometimes harsh universe. The journey ahead was uncertain, but every step was filled with promise. In her heart, Lyra knew that even in the deepest sorrow, the light of hope could guide her to a future where all beings might live in peace. Lyra continued her long journey across the silent, endless stretches of space. Each day brought new landscapes of glittering stardust and barren, forgotten worlds. Though her heart still carried the pain of exile, a small spark of hope shone within her. One bright afternoon, while traveling near the edge of the known galaxy, Lyra noticed something unusual, a faint light that moved against the backdrop of twinkling stars. Curiosity led her closer, and as she approached, she saw that the light came from a small, worn spacecraft. It was unlike the grand vessels of her own royal world. This ship had a simple design, with rounded edges and a faded human flag painted on its side. Its lights pulsed softly, calling out like a beacon in the vast darkness. Inside the ship, a small crew of human explorers worked together with quiet determination. Their faces, marked by both hope and weariness, showed that they had seen many wonders and hardships in their travels. Captain Jonas, a kind and steady man with warm brown eyes, led the crew with a gentle authority. He had built a team that believed in the strength of unity and the promise of new beginnings. When Lyra's small escape pod drifted near the ship, the humans on board saw her presence on their sensor screens. They had been traveling far from Earth and other familiar worlds, seeking new lands and new friendships. At first, there was caution among the crew. They remembered old stories of other beings who had come from faraway stars, some who had been foes and some who had been friends. But Captain Jonas believed in giving every traveler a chance. He ordered his crew to prepare a rescue shuttle to bring the stranger aboard. Lyra, sitting quietly in her escape pod, felt a mix of hope and nervousness. The human ship glided closer, and a small shuttle extended its arm to her. With trembling steps, she moved toward it. The shuttle's door opened slowly, and inside, soft lights and gentle voices welcomed her. One of the crew members, a young woman named Mira with kind eyes, stepped forward and offered her a warm smile. In the simple language of gestures and soft words, the crew made it clear that they meant no harm. They helped Lyra into the shuttle and guided her safely aboard their vessel. The moment was both strange and comforting for her. Never before had she felt such kindness after all the cold rejection she had experienced from her own home. Once inside the ship, Lyra marveled at the humble surroundings. There were no towering thrones or grand halls, just a close-knit space where every person worked together to keep the ship alive. She sat down at a table with the crew as they shared a modest meal. The food was simple, but it warmed her heart because it was offered with genuine care. Captain Jonas spoke gently to her, asking her about her journey. Though her words were few at first, Lyra slowly began to explain how she had been cast away from her kingdom. She told them of the palace's cold corridors and the heavy silence that had filled her days. As she spoke, the humans listened with understanding eyes and patient hearts. They shared their own stories of loss and hope, of leaving behind old lives to search for something better. The ship soon became a safe haven for Lyra. In the quiet evenings, as the ship sailed through the silent sea of stars, she found comfort in the simple acts of friendship. Mira would sometimes show her the little garden growing in a corner of the ship, a small collection of plants carefully tended by the crew. The sight of life, so simple and persistent, reminded Lyra that hope could be found even in the smallest of places. Days turned into weeks, and as the ship traveled deeper into the unknown, Lyra began to learn more about these human explorers. Their language was simple and honest, filled with words that celebrated life and kindness. They spoke of Earth as a place where dreams were cherished, and every being was valued for their heart rather than their origin. In their stories, Lyra saw a mirror of the compassion she had always wished for in her own world. The crew's trust and generosity slowly healed the wounds of her past. Every smile, every shared story, and every moment of genuine care began to replace the cold memories of her exile. In the midst of the vast emptiness of space, the humans had built a small world of understanding and friendship. Their willingness to welcome a stranger like her made Lyra feel that perhaps she was meant for something more than the role of an abandoned princess. As the human ship sailed on, Lyra's thoughts turned to a future filled with promise. She realized that this chance encounter was not merely a random meeting, but a turning point in her life. The crew's kindness had opened a door to new possibilities, a chance to learn, to grow, and to become a part of a community that valued every life. In the quiet hum of the ship's engines, as stars passed by like silent witnesses, Lyra felt the first true stirrings of hope. Though her journey was far from over, the warmth and light of her new companions gave her strength. In the gentle embrace of human kindness, she began to see that her destiny was not defined by the cruelty of her past, but by the promise of a future where every being could find a home in the hearts of others. And so, as the ship sailed steadily through the cosmic sea, Lyra embarked on the next chapter of her journey, one filled with discovery, compassion, and the enduring hope that, even among the stars, the bonds of friendship could light the way to a brighter tomorrow. Lyra soon discovered that life aboard the human ship was unlike anything she had known before. Every day brought new lessons in the meaning of trust and friendship. In the quiet corridors of the ship, she began to learn the simple ways of her new companions. The crew, who had once greeted her with caution, now showed her kindness and gentle smiles that warmed her heart. From the moment she stepped into the main common area, Lyra noticed how everyone worked together. The ship was small and full of life. Crew members moved about with purpose, fixing broken equipment, tending to a little garden in one corner, or carefully checking the ship's instruments. In these everyday tasks, the humans showed that strength did not come from power or harsh commands, but from cooperation and care. It was a new way of life that was both humble and strong. Captain Jonas often gathered the crew for brief meetings. In these meetings, he spoke in clear, simple words about their journey and the challenges ahead. One morning, as soft light filled the room, he said, "Out here, we depend on each other. Trust is what keeps us safe and helps us grow." His words resonated with Lyra. For so long, she had known only cold orders and strict rules. But here, trust was built slowly through small acts of kindness. She began to understand that every smile, every helping hand, and every shared story was a brick in the foundation of their community. Mira, the young crew member who had first welcomed her aboard, took a special interest in helping Lyra learn the routines of the ship. Together, they spent long hours in the little garden. Mira explained how each plant needed careful attention and regular watering. Just like us, these plants grow stronger with care and time, Mira said gently. Lyra listened and helped water the plants. With each small gesture, she felt that a new kind of strength was growing inside her, a strength built on care rather than power. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra began to take on tasks of her own. At first, she helped by organizing supplies in the storage room. Soon, she found herself assisting with repairs on the ship. Under the watchful guidance of the crew, she learned how to fix a loose cable or tighten a screw. Even though her hands were not used to these tasks, the crew's patient instructions and warm encouragement made her feel valued. Every time she completed a small repair, she saw the bright smile of a crew member and felt her heart swell with a new sense of belonging. During quiet evenings, when the ship drifted in the soft glow of distant stars, Lyra sat with her new friends. They would share simple meals and stories from their past. One evening, as the group gathered around a low table, an older crew member named Thomas spoke of his life on a far-off colony. His voice was soft, but full of hope as he recounted moments of hardship and the comfort of community. Lyra listened carefully. In Thomas's words, she found echoes of her own past pain and the promise of a new future built on understanding and trust. Slowly, the bonds of trust among the crew grew stronger. Each member had their own story of loss and hope, and together they created an environment where every word was honest and every action meant care. Lyra began to share parts of her own story too. She told them about the cold halls of her palace, the harsh words of her father, and the loneliness that had once filled her days. The crew did not judge her. Instead, they listened with kind eyes and open hearts. In their acceptance, she found the courage to believe that her past did not have to define her future. One quiet afternoon, when the ship glided past a bright cluster of stars, Lyra walked slowly along a narrow corridor. She paused at a window that looked out into the endless sea of space. There, in the vast darkness, she thought about how far she had come. From a life of isolation and harsh rules to one filled with friendship and understanding. Each memory of kindness was a small light, and together they formed a bright path that stretched ahead of her. The simple acts of trust and cooperation on the ship began to heal the old wounds of her exile. Lyra realized that trust was not given lightly but earned through genuine care and hard work. The more she worked alongside the crew, the more she saw that strength lay not in power or titles, but in the unity of hearts that cared for one another. Her new friends showed her that every individual, no matter where they came from, had a part to play in building a better future. As the ship sailed onward, Lyra felt a deep gratitude for the bonds that had been formed. Every shared meal, every smile, and every word of encouragement had helped her grow in ways she never thought possible. The trust she built with these human explorers had become the bridge that connected her lonely past with a hopeful future. In the gentle light of the ship's corridors and the soft hum of its engines, she understood that true strength was born from the simple acts of caring for one another. In this small, moving community among the stars, Lyra found her place. The bonds of trust that had been slowly woven together were now strong enough to support her on the journey ahead. With each new day, the crew's kindness and unity helped to erase the harsh memories of her past, replacing them with hope and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine as the ship's alarm began to sound. The calm routine of life aboard the human vessel was shattered by a sudden warning from the sensors. A distant signal had grown stronger over the past few minutes, and now it filled every room with a sense of impending danger. Captain Jonas quickly gathered the crew at the main control panel, his eyes fixed on the flashing lights that marked the approach of unknown vessels. The screens displayed several enemy ships, their dark hulls contrasting sharply with the soft glow of the human ship's interior. These were not friendly travelers. They moved in tight formation, a clear sign that they were part of an organized force from Lyra's past, a remnant of the harsh regime that had once ruled her home. Whispers spread among the crew as they realized that these ships were linked to the very power that had cast her aside. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She recalled the strict orders and unyielding commands of her father's world and felt a mix of fear and determination. The enemy was a reminder of the cold, unkind rules she had once known. Now on this ship, she had learned that strength came from unity and trust, not fear. With quiet resolve, she stepped closer to the console, where technicians were already working to plot the enemy's course. Captain Jonas spoke in a clear, steady voice. "We must stay calm and work together. Our goal is to avoid a direct confrontation, but we must be ready to defend ourselves if needed." His words, though simple, carried a weight that calmed the worried looks on the crew's faces. Everyone knew that this moment would test the very bonds they had built together. The human crew sprang into action. Technicians adjusted the ship's trajectory and checked every system, while a few crew members prepared the rescue shuttles and defense modules. Even though Lyra was still learning the ways of these brave explorers, she offered her help at the control station. Under the guidance of her new friends, she monitored the enemy's approach, her fingers moving steadily over the controls as she updated the ship's path. Outside the large viewing window, the enemy ships grew larger and more menacing. Their presence was a stark reminder that even in the vast emptiness of space, Remnants of old power could still bring great danger. Lyra felt a deep stirring inside her, memories of the cold corridors of her former palace, mixed with a newfound determination to fight for a better future. The lessons of care, trust, and cooperation that the human crew had taught her now shone like a beacon in the dark. For several tense minutes, the human ship carefully maneuvered through the stars. Each small alarm and warning was met with quick and precise action. The enemy vessels, moving in perfect order, seemed intent on cutting off the human ship's escape route. It was clear that these foes wanted to remind Lyra and her new friends of her past, and to force them into a fight. Captain Jonas decided that the best course of action was to avoid a head-on conflict. "We will use our knowledge of this sector's star paths," he explained. "Our goal is to steer clear of their line of fire, but if they come too close, we will defend ourselves." His calm tone bolstered the courage of everyone on board. Lyra focused on the readings in front of her. She adjusted the navigation controls under the watchful eye of a senior technician. The ship started to weave through clusters of stars and cosmic dust, a risky but clever maneuver meant to confuse the enemy. Even as the enemy ships continued to pursue them, the human vessel began to slip through narrow gaps in the star field, taking advantage of the natural obstacles in space. At one point, a sudden flare of light burst from one of the enemy ships, a warning shot in the form of a bright, shooting star that raced past their window. The human ship shuddered under the impact of the signal, but the crew remained focused. Each member played their part with a quiet determination that made Lyra proud. She knew that every action they took was a step away from the dark days of her past and a move toward a future filled with hope. With the enemy in hot pursuit, Captain Jonas made a bold decision. "We will jump through a nearby wormhole," he announced. The plan was risky, but it was the best chance they had to lose the enemy ships. The crew quickly made the necessary adjustments, and the human vessel prepared for the sudden jump. For a few heartbeats, the ship trembled as it entered the wormhole, the familiar stars outside replaced by a swirling vortex of light and shadow. During the turbulent moments of the jump, Lyra clutched a small pendant given to her by Mira, a token of friendship and hope. The chaos of the wormhole lasted only moments, and then, as suddenly as it had begun, the ship emerged into calm space. On the viewing screen, the enemy ships were gone, lost in the distance behind them. A wave of relief washed over the crew. The danger had passed, and in its place was a renewed sense of unity and hope. In the quiet after the storm, Lyra looked around at her new friends. Their faces showed a mixture of exhaustion and relief, but above all, there was pride. They had faced the threat together, relying on trust, careful planning, and the courage to try something bold. In that calm moment, Lyra realized that the test of adversity had only strengthened their bonds. The enemy had come from her past to remind her of the old ways, but the human crew had shown her that a future built on care, unity, and trust was far more powerful. The simple acts of cooperation and the shared determination to protect one another had turned fear into hope and isolation into strength. Lyra now understood that every trial, every challenge, was a step on the long journey toward a brighter tomorrow. As the human ship continued its voyage through the stars, she carried with her the firm belief that the light of unity would always outshine the dark shadows of the past. Lyra sat near the observation window, watching the endless stars stretch across the sky. The ship had safely escaped the enemy vessels, but the tension from the encounter still lingered in the air. The crew had worked together flawlessly, yet the reality remained. Her past had followed her, and danger was still out there. As she gazed into the darkness of space, Mira sat down beside her with a warm smile. "You did well today," she said softly. "Your quick thinking helped us escape." Lyra nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. "But the enemy was looking for me," she admitted. "I've put all of you in danger." Mira shook her head. "We face danger every day in space. The important thing is that we stand together. You're one of us now, Lyra." Those words filled her with warmth. No one had ever told her she truly belonged before. Back in the palace, She had been expected to follow orders, to act like a perfect hare, yet she had always felt like an outsider. But here, among humans, she had found something different. Real friendships, real trust. As the ship continued its journey, Captain Jonas called a meeting in the common area. The crew gathered, some standing, some leaning against the walls, all waiting to hear what their next move would be. "We have to assume those ships will be searching for us again," Jonas said. "We need a plan, and we need to be prepared." Thomas, the experienced navigator, stroked his beard thoughtfully. "We could find a neutral station to resupply, maybe even get some information on who's behind the pursuit." The idea was a good one. Many space stations served as safe havens, places where different species could trade, refuel, and gather intelligence without fear of attack. Lyra took a deep breath. "If they're after me, I should go with you," she said. "I want to know what they're planning." Jonas studied her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, but we stay together. No one goes anywhere alone." With that decision made, the crew set a course for a nearby station known as Orion's Rest, a massive floating hub where travelers from across the galaxy gathered. It was a place of whispered secrets and dangerous deals, but also a place where one could disappear if necessary. Arrival at Orion's Rest. The space station loomed ahead, its glowing lights blinking in the darkness. As the human ship docked, Lyra felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Stepping onto solid ground again, even artificial ground, felt strange after so many days in space. The station was alive with activity. Traders shouting over prices, alien travelers moving through crowded corridors, and security officers watching from the shadows. Lyra stuck close to Mira and Thomas as they moved through the marketplace, searching for information. A local vendor, a short reptilian creature with sharp eyes, leaned forward when Jonas approached. "Looking for something, Captain?" the vendor asked in a hushed tone. "Information," Jonas replied. "We had an encounter with some ships. We need to know who sent them." The vendor's eyes flicked to Lyra. "That's an interesting question," he murmured. "Word is spreading about a high-value target who escaped from a powerful ruler. Some say it's a traitor. Some say it's someone dangerous." Lyra felt a cold shiver run through her. Mira frowned. "What else have you heard?" The vendor hesitated before lowering his voice. "They're looking for her, no doubt about it. But here's the interesting part. There are those who believe she's more than just an exiled princess. They say she's the key to changing things." Lyra blinked in surprise. "Changing things? What do you mean?" The vendor shrugged. "Your father ruled with an iron fist. Not everyone liked it. Some people believe you could be the hope they need." Lyra had never thought of herself that way. She had been cast aside, forgotten, exiled. And yet, if there were people out there who wanted a different future, could she really be part of it? Before she could ask more questions, a commotion erupted nearby. A group of armored figures entered the market, scanning the crowd with sharp, calculating eyes. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. They were searching for someone, most likely her. "Time to go," Jonas whispered urgently. The crew quickly blended into the crowd, moving carefully through the winding paths of the market. Mira took Lyra's arm, guiding her toward a side exit. The station was full of hidden passages and back corridors, and Jonas had made sure they had escape routes planned before they arrived. As they moved through the dimly lit halls, Lyra's mind raced. The enemy was relentless. They wouldn't stop looking for her. But now she realized this wasn't just about her survival. This was about something bigger, something she had never considered before. Maybe she wasn't just running from her past. Maybe she was running toward something new. When the crew finally reached the docking bay, they wasted no time boarding the ship. The engines roared to life, and within moments, they were back in space, leaving Orion's Rest behind. Lyra sat in the control room, staring at the stars. The enemy was still out there, but so were the people who believed in her. She had always wanted a purpose, a way to make a difference. Now, she had found it. She turned to Captain Jonas, determination in her eyes. I don't want to run anymore. If people believe I can change things, then I want to try. Jonas studied her before nodding. Then we'll stand by you. Mira smiled. You're not alone, Lyra. Whatever comes next, we face it together. For the first time in her life, Lyra didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like part of something greater. The stars stretched before them, endless and full of possibility. And Lyra knew this was only the beginning. Lyra stood by the observation window, watching the stars streak past as the ship moved through deep space. The weight of everything she had learned at Orion's Rest still sat heavy in her heart. She had never thought of herself as someone important, only as an outcast, someone forgotten by her own people. But now, she knew the truth. There were those who believed she was the key to change, the one who could bring hope to those suffering under her father's rule. Could she really be that person? She had spent so much of her life following orders, being told what she could and couldn't do. Now, for the first time, she had a choice. She wasn't just running anymore. She was moving towards something bigger, something that mattered. Captain Jonas entered the control room and stood beside her. His presence was steady and reassuring. You're thinking about what the vendor said, he guessed. Lyra nodded. If there are people who believe I can help them, then I can't just hide forever. I need to do something. Jonas crossed his arms. Doing something means taking risks. Your father won't just let you walk in and change things. If he finds out you're alive and working against him, he'll do everything in his power to stop you. Lyra turned to face him, her golden eyes filled with determination. I know, but I've seen what happens when people are afraid to stand up for what's right. I don't want to be afraid anymore. Jonas studied her for a long moment, then gave a small nod. Then we'll help you. Mira and Thomas soon joined them, and the crew gathered in the common area to discuss their next steps. A plan for change. The first challenge was finding allies. If there were rebels or groups who wanted to resist Lord Therion's rule, they would need to be contacted carefully. The wrong move could alert enemy spies. Jonas suggested starting on a distant colony, Vasara 4, a mining settlement on the edge of the empire. It was known for its independent spirit, and many who lived there had no love for the ruling forces. If there's any place where people might be willing to fight back, it's Vasara 4, Jonas explained. Lyra agreed. Then that's where we go. With the course set, the ship adjusted its navigation and moved toward the distant colony. Arrival at Vasara 4. Vasara 4 was a harsh world, its surface covered in rocky plains and deep tunnels where miners worked tirelessly. The settlement was a mix of rough, makeshift buildings and advanced technology, a place where survival depended on hard work and resilience. As the crew stepped onto the planet, Lyra felt the weight of the mission ahead. She was no longer just a traveler. She was here to make a difference. The streets were filled with miners, traders, and mechanics, all going about their business. Some cast wary glances at the newcomers, while others barely noticed them at all. Jonas led the way to a small underground meeting hall where local leaders gathered. Inside, a group of tough-looking individuals sat around a metal table. Their faces showed years of hardship, but also strength. A woman with sharp blue eyes and a scar on her cheek stood as they entered. "You must be the visitors from the human ship," she said, her voice firm but curious. Jonas nodded. "We heard Vasara 4 isn't happy under the Empire's rule." The woman folded her arms. "Unhappy doesn't even begin to describe it. We work hard, but the Empire takes everything. We barely have enough to survive." Lyra stepped forward. "We want to help," she said. "I want to help." The room grew quiet as the leaders studied her. Then the woman narrowed her eyes. "You look familiar." Lyra took a deep breath. "I am Lyra, daughter of Lord Therion." A murmur spread through the room. Some looked shocked. Others looked suspicious. The woman's expression hardened. "And why should we trust the daughter of the man who ruined our lives?" Lyra held her ground. Because he cast me aside when I refused to be like him. Because I've seen what he does to people, and I won't let it continue. I know what it's like to be powerless, to have no voice. I want to fight for those who can't fight for themselves." For a long moment, the room was silent. Then, slowly, the woman's expression softened. "You've got courage," she said. "That's something we respect here. But words aren't enough. If you want to prove yourself, then you'll have to stand with us when the time comes." Lyra nodded firmly. "I will." A new beginning. Over the next few days, Lyra and the crew worked alongside the people of Vazara 4. They helped repair broken equipment, learned about the colony's struggles, and listened to the stories of those who had suffered under the Empire. For the first time, Lyra felt like she was truly part of something. She wasn't just a forgotten princess. She was someone who could make a difference. One evening, as the twin moons of Vazara 4 rose in the sky, Mira found Lyra sitting on a rocky ledge overlooking the settlement. "You did well today," Mira said, sitting beside her. "They're starting to trust you." Lyra exhaled slowly. "I hope so. I don't just want to help them. I want to stand with them." Mira smiled. "You already are." Lyra looked out at the colony below, the lights of the settlement glowing like tiny stars. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be dangers, battles, and difficult choices, but she was no longer afraid. She had found her purpose, and no matter what came next, she was ready to face it, because she was not alone. And for the first time in her life, she knew she never would be again. Lyra stood on the edge of Vazara 4's rocky cliffs, staring down at the vast mining settlement below. The lights from the underground tunnels flickered like stars beneath the surface, and the cold night wind carried the voices of workers finishing their long shifts. This place, once just a forgotten colony, was now a symbol of something greater: resistance, unity, and the hope of a better future. She had spent the past few days working alongside the miners, fixing broken machinery, sharing meals, and listening to their struggles. These people had been mistreated for too long. Her father's rule had taken everything from them, leaving them with barely enough to survive. But now things were changing. Lyra turned as Captain Jonas approached, his face serious but calm. "The people trust you," he said. "They're ready to fight." She nodded. "They don't have a choice. If they don't fight, they'll never be free." Mira joined them, holding a small tablet with reports from their scouts. "We intercepted a message," she said. "The Empire knows you're here. They're sending ships." Lyra took a deep breath. She had known this moment would come. Lord Therion would never allow rebellion to take root. He would send his forces to crush it before it could grow. "We have to be ready," she said. "We can't let them take this place." Jonas smiled slightly. "You're starting to sound like a leader." Lyra glanced at the people below, at the tired but determined faces of the workers and traders who had put their trust in her. She had never wanted to be a leader. She had spent her whole life avoiding the path her father had set for her. But now she understood. A leader wasn't someone who ruled with power and fear. A leader was someone who stood with the people, who fought alongside them, who gave them hope when everything seemed lost. She wasn't the daughter of Lord Therion anymore. She was Lyra of Vazara 4, preparing for battle. The next morning, the settlement was alive with energy. The workers, once beaten down by years of oppression, now moved with purpose. They had no advanced weapons, no powerful fleet, but they had something far stronger: determination. Jonas and the crew helped organize the defense. Old mining equipment was repurposed into makeshift barriers. Cargo ships were prepared for evacuation in case things went wrong. And Lyra stood in the center of it all, helping wherever she could. As the sun rose over the distant cliffs, Thomas pointed to the sky. "They're here." A fleet of dark, metallic ships descended, their engines roaring like thunder. The Empire had come. The settlement held its breath. Then the first attack came. The enemy fired warning shots, sending explosions rippling through the outskirts of the colony. Dust and debris filled the air. But no one ran. The people of Vazarafor stood their ground. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. We fight together. We don't let them take our home. The battle began. The fight for freedom. The enemy forces landed, their soldiers moving in formation, expecting an easy victory. But they underestimated the strength of those they faced. The workers fought with everything they had, using mining lasers, old cargo loaders, and sheer determination to push back the invaders. The human crew used their knowledge of strategy, guiding the defenders with quick, smart movements. Lyra was in the middle of the fight, dodging blasts, helping the wounded, and rallying the people when they started to falter. She was no longer an outcast, no longer just a forgotten princess. She was one of them, and she would fight for them with everything she had. The battle was long and brutal. The enemy had better weapons, better armor, but the people of Vazarafor had something more powerful: hope. Then, just as things seemed desperate, a new sound echoed across the battlefield. A fleet of rogue ships appeared on the horizon. At first, Lyra didn't recognize them. But then, the communicator in her ear crackled. A voice spoke, a rebel leader from another colony, someone who had heard about Lyra's fight and had chosen to stand with her. More people were rising against the Empire. More people believed in her. The enemy forces, realizing they were outnumbered, retreated. The Empire's ships pulled away, vanishing into the dark sky. The battle was over. Vazarafor had won. A new beginning. As the dust settled, the people cheered. They had done the impossible. They had fought back against an empire that had ruled for too long. Jonas clapped Lyra on the shoulder. You did it. She shook her head. We did it. Together. Mira smiled. So what now? Lyra looked out at the stars. This was only the beginning. The fight wasn't over. There were still more people suffering under her father's rule. There were still more colonies waiting for hope. Lyra wasn't just an exiled princess anymore. She was a leader, a symbol of change. And she would keep fighting until the whole galaxy was free. With a deep breath, she turned to her friends. Now we bring hope to others. And with that, the ship prepared for its next journey. The stars stretched before them, endless and full of possibilities. And Lyra, once cast aside, was now a hero.